Here we go. And a very good evening to you and welcome to Politics 101. I'm David Hinds, having some difficulty here getting the system to start, but I think um, we do have everything going now. Welcome to you if you're joining us from Guyana, or you're joining us from the wider Caribbean, or you're joining us from further afield in Europe and the United States. And wherever you are in the world, welcome to Politics 101. It's a brand new week. And of course, we are counting down to the Christmas holidays and all of that good stuff that comes with the Christmas holidays. We can't, Christmas is not what it used to be, but we still hold on to the tradition, as I would have intimated last week. It's more than just a religious holiday now. It's become very much part of our tradition, but more than that, it has taken on a kind of monetization. It has become part of the business and the commerce, and the companies make a lot of money during this time and so on. So all of that, some of it, it's beyond us. We have to try to move with the times, and clearly, this globalization thing has brought with it all kinds of changes. You can be in Guyana now and go online and order things and all of that. But here we are on a Tuesday evening. It's a nice Tuesday evening in Guyana. Not too much rain today, a few drizzles, but this Christmas season always comes with rain. And now with the global warming thing, there is more rain than normal. We're going to be talking tonight, as we do every other Tuesday night, with Dr. Henry Jeffrey, and we're going to get behind the news. Dr. Jeffrey is going to take us behind the news. We want to start off tonight dealing with two topics. The issue of GCOM and that local government election. I got a note from one of the commissioners today indicating that the meeting at GCOM today was adjourned. The meeting was adjourned without the new plan for local government election being approved. Some of the commissioners are still insisting that the minister can configure constituencies. As you know, the opposition went to court saying that the minister, it's unconstitutional for the minister to configure constituencies. And in the wake of that, the CEO has called for a new nomination date. In a sense, he seems to be agreeing with the opposition, and they're trying to work something out. But there was no meeting today. The meeting was adjourned. Vincent Alexander is going to be here tomorrow night, hopefully, if they finish their meeting early enough for him to get here. But for now, we are going to be talking about what we know, and Dr. Jeffrey, who understands these things better than I do. You know, he was a government minister. He would have sat around the table. He's a scholar on these matters. I think the opposition, they're making two big points. One is that the minister cannot configure constituencies. He cannot meddle in that. And secondly, that the question of claims and objectives, they seem to be agreeing that there should be more time than that. There's something about the voters list. That list comes back. Keep them back. So we're going to start off with those issues and some of the other relevant issues of our day. Please share the link. Please share the link and let everyone know that Politics 101 is on. Dr. Jeffrey, good evening.
Good evening, David. How are you? Good.
And how are you?
I am surviving, it is. Just about. Yes.
We're hearing you a little bit low. Perhaps your volume can go up a bit.
Well, this is a new computer.
Or you come closer to the phone. We think we are hearing you better there.
Maybe. You're hearing me a little better now?
Yes, I'm hearing you better. Yeah.
All right.
Let's start off today. A couple of weeks ago you did, when you were here, 2 weeks ago, and we were talking about the 8% race and so on, you did remind our audience that there was an arbitration and it was carried out by Father Malcolm Rodriguez, one of the names that would have been relatively popular back in the 70s and the 80s. And lo and behold, a week later, we got news that Father passed away. I know you would have worked with him at the University of Guyana, and as you did say while you were Minister of Labor, that he headed that arbitration. Care to give a few comments on his passing and his significance to a place like Guyana? Not very often you see a priest mounting the political platform as Father Malcolm did in the 70s when he was on the WPA platform and a couple of other platforms.
Yes, Malcolm was, when that arbitration came up and names came, that's one of the first time maybe I decided that there is somebody that can do this because he's fair, he's open-minded. He has a great institution behind him here. And I think at the same time, the Catholic Church were becoming more involved in social issues. Can't remember how it was designated, but it was. And because I met him at the university, and I think he's very close to the WPA, your party, as a matter of fact. That's what I can remember, essentially. And And in any discourse you have with him about anything, you will find that he's very fair, he's open-minded, he discusses, he said, let me think about that before we move on there. Let's talk about some. And, I was very impressed from my university days about Father. So when I called him and I said, I've got a hard job for you here, because remember, the same time there was strikes and there was the public service union was striking and all of that. And I said, well, this year I don't have to go to anybody really to deal with this, and I can. I wonder if you want to take part in this. I think it's the same arbitration. And he said, okay, I will do it, but you know me. I said, I know you, you know. And from that day on, when we meet, ever so on, he did what he had to do. I think he turned out, I think he gave them 10%. Or something like that, and that was that, because the agreement between the public service union and the government and the teachers and government was quite different. The public union service union agreement says that the parties, both the union and the government, remember, I'm Minister of Labor here. So although I'm a minister in the government, I'm not the government for this purpose. Is the public service and the government they have to come to some agreement on the chairman. I think what the teachers' agreement with the government has said was that the minister can choose for the most part. I think it's something like that. I'm trying to remember so far. And essentially, I chose Father Rodriguez, largely because I know if there's someone that can be fair and try their best to come to a conclusion that would be good for Guyana, it's Father Rodriguez. And he took it on, and that was the end of that little debacle at that stage. It's not that I didn't find people that I thought could have dealt with the public service union, but the thing also that was fair in Guyana, I mean, but they didn't want to take it on. They just said, this is too political. And as I told you, Miles Fitzpatrick came up with the name of Dr. Armstrong. It was passed to both the PPP, Dr. Luncheon, and the Public Service Union, Mr. Yard, and they both agreed. I could not have agreed. They agree, and that's all we think. So, with his passing, well, all of us will pass. One would hope that he has left a tradition of this objectivity, say, do what it is that you believe is correct at any point of time now, because of any political party saying do this and do that, and maybe and not with too much self-interest. Remember, Father had the Catholic Church behind him, so there's not anybody going to want to mess with that. And the PPP certainly wouldn't want to mess with the Catholic Church. They actually believe that in the 1950s, the Catholic Church was instrumental in getting them removed from government, which I'm not certain is not true. But the point is, and furthermore, they had. He has a solid economic base. He's a priest. He don't want anything. He's not going anywhere. So he was the ideal person. I didn't think about all that when I called him. I just called him because he was a Father Rodriguez and a friend that we used to talk at university. So there it is. The passing, we all will pass, I suppose. Although I have concerns about that one myself. I tell my friends I will not die, but we shall see.
Henry, as you spoke there about Father Rodriguez and the fact that he was chosen and there were no objections from the union, from the PPP. Certainly there were no objections from the opposition at that time. As you said, he was closely associated with the WPA in the 1970s. I came into politics, and he was one of the persons on the WPA platform, along with Rodney and the others and so forth. The fact that you, in a place like Guyana that is so divisive, that you could find someone who did not meet objection from any of the players at the time. I'm thinking that we don't have so many people in Guyana that would be chosen for a sensitive assignment like that and not come up against objection from some quarters. And I think that's perhaps one of the hallmarks. You keep saying fairness, fairness, fairness. And that is what you are looking for in somebody in a society like this, or any society that you want to carry out such an assignment, is that all sides must believe that person would be fair. I really think it. I really think that it's a testimony to Malcolm's own its own politics. You know, he clearly had an ideological bent to have associated with the radical WPA in the 70s, and but in spite of that, that he still was a fair person. For our audience, Henry, because it would have been the time when you were at university and coming back to Guyana, being part of the thing. He is credited with perhaps the face of liberation theology in Guyana. It's as you know, it would have been rooted more in Latin America. But talk about that. Talk about
I didn't remember theology. I didn't remember. As I said, the designations missed me there, but it was liberation philosophy and theology we're talking about, which means that the church can have no standoffish way about what's going on. It didn't have any ways. If you ask Chetty Jagan, he would say the church never had a standoff. They know what they wanted and they went out and fought for it. But this notion that the church liberation philosophy and theology was a little bit more than that. It was saying that we have a responsibility, working people to, or maybe that's why maybe it's the designation that got him by you, because saying we are going for the working people. And at that time, there was Rodney, there was everybody there saying, and for the most part, lots of anti-Burnhamism and that sort of a thing. But essentially, yes, it is the. I think that I have not read a lot about liberation theology because it has become part of the status quo in the Roman Catholic Church now, that they can go. Look at Aristide. Aristide was a Roman Catholic priest too. He was some kind of priest,
Yeah, he was a Roman Catholic priest, yes.
Exactly. So that you can go in politics, you can get there, but you got to always keep the faith. It matters not. And Jesus and so on was always with ordinary people, working people, trying to that sort of a thing. And no, I've always thought that sort of bent was a useful kind of a way for a priest to be able to use, because the church was always involved in the church was politics. The church was running kings and queens in the Middle Ages and so on. So the church was politics until they ran into Martin Luther, and then he started, well, you don't need church and that sort of. Well, that sort of idea. So yeah, Malcolm was a champion from my standpoint.
And if you remember the Nicaraguan Revolution, there were two priests in the cabinet of that revolutionary government.
Oh no, all sorts of governments in that period start having priests in the cabinet, and that priest can, become part of the thing, because it is part of the tradition of the church. It wasn't that the church, the Roman Catholic Church, was the major political power at the time. I think it's when we start talking about nation states and the power of nation states with Henry and all, that you have the church start pulling back because they know national power, they have guns, they have anything. I think once somebody said so to Stalin, he says, somebody said to Stalin, but the Pope wouldn't like it. The Pope wouldn't like it. And Stalin said to him, how much battalions the Pope have? So, but the
Well,
Pope
yeah.
and his battalions, they're there. They're not, they have guns and all of that there, but they're there. And the Pope is still respected. Stalin is, for the most part, disrespected and gone.
Yeah. And for young people like myself, coming in and seeing Father Rodriguez with his beret, we call it beret here in Guyana,
Yeah,
Che Guevara, like, I mean, it was something else,
yeah,
because as you said, our we view the church as being outside of politics, and I think he really epitomizes that linkage of the church with social and political struggle, especially on behalf of the poor. Henry, let's go to this issue of local government elections. So they named the date. The opposition was toying with whether to participate or not to participate, and then all of a sudden, the opposition went to court, arguing that the election should be postponed because the minister constitutionally should not be fiddling with boundaries, and also arguing that there should be time for uh, 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 time to scrutinize the list, making the argument that there was not enough time to scrutinize the list. And I understand that the opposition commissioners have been pointing this out in the commission all the time. The chairman of the commission had not been paying attention, and they were going full speed. And then as soon as the matter was filed, the CEO, who is, we understand, the PPP sees him as friendly to them, he said, well, we've got to take a second look at this thing, and took it to GCOM. And they postponed nomination there, effectively postponing the elections. Your take?
well, all right. These are extremely technical things. First of all, it would appear, I don't know, but the courts will decide all of this. But at the end of the day, it does appear that the minister can determine the constituency boundaries in terms of the wider constituency boundaries, but he can't determine what will happen within the constituency boundaries. I mean, that's why I said it's the major, the problems, the problem is that it's not simply a matter of the minister determining that, so to speak. It's about issues having to do with people on the list, that the local government list cannot come off of the national electoral list, because that's a different story. And a local government list means that you have to be in the locality to vote or to run to be a representative. And therefore, there are two kind of different lists. And I think the opposition is claiming effectively that there are persons on the list that live outside of the vicinity or the boundaries there, the constituent, the internal constituents, and so on. And therefore, these people need to be gotten off the list. And they're even arguing, I think Mr. Ford had been arguing, that speaks sometimes as deputy leader, that essentially you got dead people on the list. But there is a general problem that you'll face with these lists. And I think he was saying something that some section of the law 24 or something like that can't deal with it, as the CEO was saying. But those are things for the court. David, we are in this trouble like we're in trouble all the time. Look at this thing. We got carbon credit to sell. We went to sell some carbon credit. I mean, it's there to be sold. No, all right. Environmental issues. Guyana has a nice little forest here next door to the giant Brazil. You know, carbon maybe, forest maybe takes up 17% and so on. Therefore, everybody wants to gain something from it, but at the same time to help with global the environmental issue, global warming, and all of that. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, you can go. How is it that we can't do that without all this controversy? The Americans say they're not consulted. And then I think Mr. Schuman made a very alarming, he wrote a very alarming a piece in this Tabernacle claiming that once you had signed on to the carbon, the PPP thing, what they call low carbon development strategy, you signed on to anything coming from it. So, like if I sign on to Guyana Constitution, any law you make after, I sign on to that law. Or if I sign on to a specific law with you, any bylaw you bring, I agree with. I was alarmed. I was totally alarmed at that sort of thing. But I see Janet Volkan today said it's even illegal. But you can't. That the people are making these decisions can't just make them because these people got certain transported rights to these properties and so on. Now I'm bringing that into this discourse largely because it seems to me that all of this thing about as a reason because the people believe it don't have to be politically inclusive. It believes it can go out there and change electoral law, which fundamentally it cannot do. When people say a minister can do something in any law, they mean it's his responsibility to take it to Parliament. They don't mean you can do it willy-nilly. They don't mean that. David, I changed perhaps the most controversial law in Guyana history. I changed the Labor Relations Bill that gives unions the right to. Remember, the bill led to PPP being overthrown maybe twice.
Twice, yes. 1953 and 64.
Yeah. No, but it wasn't easy. You had to deal with Polydor. You know Polydor? Joseph Polydor. He's one of the most wily and clever labor leaders there ever was. You know, Polydor would say to me, Jeff, okay, but here what happened? I can guarantee you are not going to be minister all the time. And I got to write this Lagata suit. Those that will come, you're not going to be no minister all the time. And I almost failed. Because they wanted this. Lincoln was there too. Lincoln, Patrick, I don't think he used to come to all the meetings, but Lincoln was more or less there. But at the end of the day, you had to discuss. At the end of the day, of course, there's minority to save the day. Because even when I was going to Parliament with this thing, after all these thing of discussion, and the PNC was weavering one way or another, I said, we are going here to lose. This is 97. And I go to Parliament, and there's when I come up to me. He said, we're going to support you, you know. I said, really? I mean, that was a shock as in Parliament. He told me that.
Mm-hmm.
And he came up and support the bill, and the Trade Union Recognition Bill came into being. After umpteen years, since the 50s, it came into being. What you have to do is sit down with people and talk things through. There's no way that the Americans would say, we don't want the money or something, or what we can get. But you can't just run willy-nilly and come up with spurious arguments that if I accept the Constitution, I accept all the laws passed under it. And I mean, I mean, that's what Schumann seems to have been arguing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And they go,
And that is the problem. That
yeah,
is the
and
major
these
problem.
matters, Henry, can be dealt with. These people went to court. Vishnu, is Vishnu Prasad is saying, the CEO is saying, okay, the big stakeholder, the PNC, they have a stake in this thing. We can go forward with this thing if they have problems with it. Why couldn't he say that before this thing
Because
go
the
to court?
PDP did not tell him to say that before. Don't ask me questions you know the answer to put me in anything. Vishnu Prasad would never have gone and said that if the PDP didn't say that. The PDP did not tell him to say so. That might have been his opinion, but they didn't agree with him saying so before he come and says so.
And you have it there.
I mean, I don't understand. And that's tell you, let's deal with this thing quite fairly. And I understand his position. I understand it. But don't tell me that he waited. As you asked the question, he must have known that before. They all must have known that before. But you say it is not simply a matter of the local pressure is important, and the local pressure but they're getting international pressure too. So you have a situation in which they are told, look, we need inclusive. The American ambassador in her speech, as I wrote down about 2 weeks, says, look, she spoke to economic inclusiveness. The PDP came with an end of year consumer price index from the IMF saying you're going to have inflation of 9.4%. Let's put it at 10. Let me round it off because, let's go on the side of the workers here. The PPP comes and gives them 8%. And then want to argue that this is not an apartheid state. And then want to argue that it is struggling for black people. How can you're making them poorer? How are you going to struggle to them by making them poorer? How? So what happened? They put up this thing, and then they must be know that they have to finesse it. And they finesse it a bit with police and so on. But then people say, but what is that? You are making these people poorer. You are becoming more poor, if poorer is not the right way. More poor. You are becoming more poor. So how can you give a man an end of year salary that he's poor from and say you love him, you love him, you want to help him? What kind of thing? Well, let me show you what we have in mind when we talk about inclusiveness. And the result is President Ali yesterday. Is yesterday or today? Yesterday. You see the increases. You see the picture in the Starbucks News. He looked happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he looked happy. Not at all.
No.
He looked. What's that? And imagine now they're getting increases from 13 to 74%.
Yeah.
In the context of Ghana, that is what's supposed to be done. So some internal pressure, external pressure has led to that. The people didn't come to that. People just give anybody 74%. People see the 8% to start with. And you end up with 74%. And for some people, and rightly so, you got doctors, professionals, you got them hanging on $300,000, $200,000 a month. It's nonsensical. So somebody had to say, you have money now, man. Let's get this thing going. This is what people mean when they say inclusiveness. The question arises now, what going to happen to the teachers and all the engineers in the other? We'll wait and see. Yes, the local pressure is totally important to getting things done. Since this, long I wrote my thing that saying there is an attempt by the PPP to dominate the political situation in Guyana. And since it is an ethnic party, It is an ethnic party. It's nothing. The PNC too. They're ethnic parties. They got 90% of the vote coming from there, from ethnicity. You look at the central executive of the PPP, which I did when I was making that point in 2011. I was making that point. Look at their central executive. Two blacks were in it at that time. Two. Luncheon and somebody. And Collymore.
Right. Yes, Collymore.
Out of 15. That was a central executive committee. And as you come down, by the time you get to the Redos, they had 72%. And I'm saying, how they get 72% if Burnham was all this bad and was giving black people all these jobs? They must have changed that to get there. And I said that since 2011. So we are in this confusion with elections and so on, simply because the system is not politically inclusive. Until it becomes so, people are going to always be quarreling about things. You got to take the time, sit down and gaff with them and say, man, and show them that their interest will not be disturbed. So when I see these things, I just go and drink, because effectively I say the same story. It's if somebody wants to be autocratic, and David, I'm going to tell you something here today. Don't blame just the leadership of the PPP or PNC. You know how many Guyanese sit down and say, when you're in power, you shouldn't have to give it up. Do anything almost to keep it on both sides of this party thing. You can do what you like to keep the power. Well, you got me mad to be in power and lose it. Like if it's power is something for you to lose and win at any cost. And that is part of the problem in Guyana.
Henry Jeffrey here tonight, getting behind the news, talking about what's happening, especially in the area of wages and salary, and local government elections being postponed because the PNC/opposition has gone to court. GCOM seems to be in turbulence. We're going to have Vincent Alexander here tonight to tell us about what's going on behind the scenes at GCOM as far as these local government elections are concerned. I want to thank all of you who are joining us tonight. Good evening to you, and we're coming to you tonight from Guyana. Politics 101 coming to you from Guyana. It's always good to be home. They can chase you from anywhere else, but they can't chase you from you. Well, some people would like to chase you even from where you are. It was short who said, nobody go run me from where we come from. Me papa musnyam, me mommy musnyam. Short from Antigua, phenomenal Calypsonian. Jeffrey, we've always been talking, and you have been part of that group who's been saying that we have to move beyond the rhetoric and begin to put some actual numbers on the table to back up the arguments that we've been making. Nigel Hughes has been in the forefront of that call, and apparently has put together a research team, and they have come up with some quote-unquote data. And I was able to send that to you. Nigel was here last week, and when he revealed some of those numbers, people on the program and beyond were really surprised at the data. So he started off, he looked at the contracts for roads, he looked at license for gold export, he looked at the license in the stone and quarry thing, and oh my. But anyhow, what's your general impressions? And then we're going to get into some of the specifics.
Well, as I said, I I spotted that some time ago. And in that same article, I told you, I pointed out that if you go in the yellow pages after all these 10 years, I think, of PPP government, you will see what's going on. How many African names you see? If you walk down Regent Street, let's move it a little bit here. Even now, they are saying that, all right, Africans are about, their contracts, they get about 10%. How many businesses you think is in in Regent Street? Because my judgment tell me about 200, about, if you go down Regent Street. What's your thing? You think you see 10% of African building businesses down there? You think
Much
you
less.
see 20 African businesses down Regent Street or any one major street? I made this point 15 years ago. I said the truth is that you would not, so far as I'm concerned, see that. When you put up the numbers, and the numbers are alarming, there are a lot, but the PPP has already started saying, but they're being so all the time.
Yes.
You see? That's what they're saying. They're being so all the time. It's not we and to make it so. It was always so. It might have been worse, they're going to say. But I see even in they give out 200, for instance, and 88 contracts. How much of these contracts black people get? 10.4%. And in value terms, and that's in value terms, they get 7% of the resources coming from those. I mean, that's alarming. It's alarming for any country that wants to call it. It doesn't matter, even if it was historically so. Your job is not to leave it historically so.
Yeah.
Your job is to change the dynamics. You can't say, or you live in some notion, black people can't run business if it suits you, but you can go all around the world. They're running businesses. They're all over the place. Once given the opportunity and not tied down by historical all sort of roadblocks. Your job is to ease those roadblocks, to take them away. You've been there 25 years and Nigel can still come up with statistics like this. I mean, it's an amazing thing. They should have had their in shame. You can't tell me it was there. Your job is to change the dynamics.
That's right. That's right.
You've been there for 25 hours, Granger. You hang there for a couple of years, but by the time Chandas come, there's all he was looking at. You got to change the dynamics. And they have not done so. Indeed, they sought to profit from it for all intents and purposes. Because, and there are reasons for this. Reasons. If you give black businesses and they get rich, they're going to give PNC money.
Yes. Yes.
They're going to support because of the ethnic divide in the country. My great president said he's going to end racism or kill racism. He used a word like that. I don't know. But no, it's a good aspiration. But I'm going to tell him something. This has been around for the 70 years. And I would love it can go away, but it's not going to go away like that. And if you give black people and they all the business come thing and so on, they're going to give openly, start giving PPP, PNC money. If you are open government and said, all is open and, you can give who you want and all, they're going to give. And what's going to happen to you? So that's maybe one of the most important reasons that it is best that the black population remain poor for the more relatively poor. So you can get them 8% when the inflation rate is 10. Because you want them to come to you. The blacks that come to them, the Africans who go to them going to benefit. And that is the idea. If you come by me, you're going to benefit. Bishop almost said it, didn't he? He said it better. If you want your road in Georgetown fixed, you better join the PPP. Well, he made the ultimate commitment at Man Report during the burial. He said, if God come down, Jesus come back, we're going to vote for the PPP. So, I mean, That is the ultimate commitment.
But Henry, I mean, we always think that the PPP has things logically worked out and so on, and perhaps they do. But in making the argument that it has always been so, um, uh, 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 people like yourself and myself who dabble more in the qualitative aspects of things, we have been saying exactly that the thing is part of the systems and the institution what the Americans are calling systemic racism, and they are now in a sense agreeing with us. And as you say, if it's systemic, the thing is to change it.
Of course. But the Americans are trying to change it. The Americans got all sorts of things to help blacks get up in business. Oh, this Latin got nothing. Here it is to say, we have something for small businesses. Well, where is that? Yeah. We are given to small businesses. You can be given to all the Indian small businesses. You might be so for all we know, and you're going to be doing. I'm not saying that is what occurring, but we got to judge these things from results. Now we use it. Show me where your thing in small business has helped more black business. Just like how Nigel and company can go, and Naim and others can go and say, whoa, this is what the case is. Show me. And that is why always I've said you need, well, not always, since the issues in the world are said, in terms of it, you need an ethnic audit. An ethnic audit is important to this country to say where people were, where they are, set up something to where you must see them by which time, and the resources you are willing to put in. Imagine in Kosovo, the West did that for populations of less than 2% of the population. They give the populations, I think, not the Croats, Serbs, they give the Serbs the right to object to laws being passed if they think it affects their interests. I mean, what's going on in Guyana? Are we backward? I mean, well, we are backward. We know we're in an ethnic situation, and this is where these situations normally go. And there are always perhaps people like me and you sit down and people say, they're stupid. Oh, they're this. They don't know what they're talking about. And that goes for all sides that go do that. I mean, let's be fair here. That's how it is.
Yeah, and when Nigel was on, you looked at the data there on the stones and quarry industry, and the black involvement there is less than 10%. And Nigel was saying he counted on the way from the airport at the number of trucks that night, and then he said, well, based on the data showing that blacks are only benefiting from 10%, less than 10% of these trucks that pass in there, given the data. And last night I was coming from the airport, and I find myself doing the same thing. My son and I counted 10 trucks from the airport to the yard turn there, from the highway junction to the yard turn, and we counted 15 trucks. And I'm saying, Lord of mercy, you pass these trucks all the time when you're coming down these bank roads, but now you're able to count those trucks and say, if I were to make a general conclusion, less than 10% of this wealth that is being transferred there is owned by black businesses. Quite stunning, even for a country like ours that is that is so divided. What would you know that apparently people are beginning to say, let's get the data. Okay, we are going to get it. I get the sense that a lot of this data comes from people, external sources, the other governments that are doing work in Guyana, in the international agencies, because you can't go on a government website and get this kind of information. So it obviously has to come from internally, people working in the system, and international agencies. What now that we are beginning to get these numbers? you hinted that the PPP is going to want to shift the discussion to something else. So what next from the PPP side, and what next you think from the opposition side in the face of these quote unquote data?
First of all, I think the discourse on data must be twofold. First, I think we have provided enough data to make the government needs to do an analysis. We have presented a case, sufficient of a case to say that this is so. And therefore the government must now go and give clear data, clear analysis as part, as I said before, of an ethnic audit, ethnic disparity audit. They must do it of themselves. We have done enough insofar. I think we did enough all the time. We have presented what they call an ipso facto case or something like that. No, not ipso facto. Somehow. And anyway, we have done that. So they should now present an ethnic audit to demonstrate to this country that we are lying, that this is not so, that the PPP government has raised the amount of black businesses there is, and this is what they plan to do in the future. That is why any sense of my government, that is why I do. I say these people are lying on me. It is not so. And I now will have to, they have the money to do it and get an inclusive audit, and let's see if we are lying. I mean, I'm always willing to say, well, you're wrong. I mean, so, but you can't sit there and tell the poor people to go and find the numbers. They are seeing the numbers. They're going to. And if that was so, why you give them 8% when you should have given them 9.4 or 10? Why? So I have no thing with that. I always knew, for since about 2011, I saw it and I started writing about it. So that is my position that on that issue. The person
from the opposition standpoint, what they should now do.
What should they now do? Partly what they're doing, but partly they got mobilized. This here is a political battle. Political battles of this sort don't finish in court. They're doing well in the sense that they're going to court. They're mobilizing internationally, which is of vital importance in issues like this. Even in Northern Ireland and all the fight, remember, is an international intervention that brought the Good Friday Agreement. It's not all the shooting up. It wasn't doing it. So don't think all the shoot up going to do it here. And I think we have the international invention anyway. I think part of it is that the result of this big increase today. That says very well, it's obvious that people don't like what you do there, and therefore you have to do better. So effectively, I think they have to continue that, but they got to continue mobilizing and enhancing the forces in Guyana. And they have enough, Nigel, and I see what's his name in the press also, in Village Voice also has some numbers there. And so effectively, they're building the numbers. But I think they have provided now sufficient numbers for people to say, for the government, if it is wrong, to denote today. Don't make Jagyo tell you about what? Take them to court? Take them to court to say what? What are you going to take people to court to say? You're going to take people to court to say, oh, the procurement commission was right, or the procurement board in the ministry, or they acted fairly. That's not the issue. That is really not the issue. I can put out now a kind of ad that's going to get only the people I want, and they will deal with it in that manner. That is not the issue. The issue that you are a government, and a government of all the people of this country, And it is your duty, your responsibility to take these people out of poverty, to look at how you can bring one Guyana. Borno had said, one nation, one people, one destiny, and all of that. But to bring one Guyana. And the PPP guys show us how they did that in the past 25 years. As Nigeria is 25 years, they have not. So I think that they have to continue along this road of
Henry Jeffrey here, telling it like it is, as he always does. Good night to all of you joining us from Atlanta, from Florida, from Maryland, and of course from all over Guyana. Good evening, Sister Ace Pile, from Bachelor's Adventure or Paradise. So same all two. Good evening to you. And the bookers are out in large numbers tonight. Good evening, Mr. David Amsterdam. And thanking all of you for coming down. I know it's Christmas time and people are beginning to go to the malls in the evenings and so on and so forth. But you still find time for our program and other programs, keeping the light shining. As you heard Dr. Jeffrey just saying, that he thinks that we have provided enough evidence. And now the call should be for the government to refute these figures. And if they don't refute it, we have to pressure them to move swiftly to changing this situation. We are on the right track. We are on the right track, and thanks to you. Thanks to you, of course, we continue to do the kind of work that you do in struggle. Struggle sometimes can end swiftly. Sometimes it can be drawn out, but you always have to be on the ball. We saw a couple of days ago there, I think yesterday, what they call them, the mayor. I was looking, not His Majesty, His Worship, the mayor, throwing himself down on the road to prevent vehicles from breaking down people's stall in front of the hospital, the Georgetown Hospital, and to remove them. And the minister, it seems, decided that he was going to call off the operation. And what is at issue here is where the authority of the local authority, the town council, stops, and where the authority of the central government begins. Certainly, Newmarket Street and all the streets, I think the central government agrees that that's the domain of the mayor and town council. But they're saying that the right to order in the city is a government right. So we have here the clash between the right to order on the part of the central government and the right to ensure that the citizens eat. Jeffrey, you are in government, and this question of order and freedom is always a touchy question. How do you see this latest development?
Well, what you're talking about is not order and freedom. You're talking about order and survival.
There you go.
You're saying, and you know which one takes precedence in that.
That's because,
right. I mean, order. I think Marley said it. No, without justice. I mean, you and I going to do things that will make me die, all right, and starve. I'm going to have to take all the necessary steps I can to prevent that. A will is part of human nature. It's just not going to happen. And all of this is happening because the people are coming to realize, PPP and PPP own supporters are coming to realize that they can't answer these things sensibly. They cannot answer them sensibly. And the major problem we face is a simple one. It's who they're at the table at the end of the day, boss. It's who they're at the end. Don't matter what all the things. Because put Africans at the table, well, the Indians going to start problems. And if the Africans start trying to show too much thing to the Indians, they're going to be other problem from their side. So there will always be this. Guyana is an equitably divided society in terms of ethnicity. It's who's at the table. That is the next lesson that people learn. It has not learned it as yet. It didn't learn the economic one. It learned it yesterday or day before. Yesterday, they had to put out what is really an equitable package. That makes sense. For instance, how you going to tell people how much growth you got? You got 10% inflation at the end of the year. How many growths they say we had this year? Some,
19 to 20. Well, it's more last year was 19 to 20%.
No, but you see, your GDP growth might be different from GNP growth and all of that because all the growth going with XR with currency.
Right.
So it might only be a couple percent. But we did have growth. So you had a little 3% on that to tell people you are a little bit better off. The inflation rate is, and Cherry Jagan said it. He said that's how we should really deal with things. 1 year you have to give people 17% in the public service. Because if you got growth of the economy and you have inflation of a certain level, you got to always cover inflation, or else the people worse off than they were at the end of the year. And it was public service, and therefore. And then you add something for the growth in the economy. And of course, that should be added in a sensible way that they did with the police. And now this new arrangement did, saying that, you have to give people you can't have the man there 20 years getting the same entrance. The man coming in immediately getting the same salary as the man there 20 years. It doesn't make no sense. So effectively, you got to do that differentiation.
Dr. Henry Jeffrey here tonight on a Tuesday night. Our program, of course, originating tonight from home in Guyana. Always good to be home. I'll be here for quite a few weeks and hoping to visit some of my favorite communities. The Christmas gets in the way of political work, but we'll see how much we can put in during this period. In 2022 really has been quite a year for our country, Guyana, for our struggle for justice and fairness. And as Dr. Jeffrey said just now, it's a matter of survival. I mean, as much as you walk around Georgetown and you see people putting up a little stall here and so forth, and it might be an encumbrance and all of those things, one is not denying that. But the human spirit does what it needs to do to survive. And one cannot, in this case, talk about the order and, over survival. And so it goes back. If the wealth that Jeffrey's talking about there just now is equitably distributed, then the question of people going at the corner, the road, and little shop, they're going to open a shop. If you give them enough resources, if the small business is pointed towards them who need it most. So we are on a roll. Jeffrey, closing thoughts?
Well, I think by the way, I should tell you something. You were talking about quarry. There was a African businessman, Peter Cummings. His father used to be
Yes.
You know Peter?
Uh-huh.
He came here and built the most modern quarry Guyana ever seen. He didn't come here to do quarrying. It came here to buy TNT. And myself and him, he rented a plane, and myself and him went looking for Cheddy Dragon. I was labor still. Went looking for Cheddy Dragon in the interland. We flew, we see Cheddy. Cheddy always there with the people at some we found there. Cheddy said, let me work. Anyway, that seemed not to have come out. And you know that who ended up with that quarry? Maybe one of the most modern quarries. Ask anybody that know quarry. BK.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, you must be hearing these stories around. But one day, some university student was sitting and do an analysis. And I believe it was show that Peter Cummins were forced out of that. All right, he was a bit of a troublesome fellow, would say anything he feel like and so on, But I ain't got no good reason for you doing that. He's dead now. He went after here, he went to China. He lost his money, he lost everything.
Sad story, but it's his to us. The struggle goes on. Thank you very much, Dr. Jeffrey. See you in 2 weeks' time.
See you later, Jay.
And to your audience, of course, it's that time, the end of the year. It's giving time. We're on our end of the year fund drive, or some people say fund drive, some say membership drive, some say support drive. But we come to you at this time of giving as you're contemplating gifts to please donate. However small your donation or however big your donation could be to Politics 101, as we try to keep ourselves on air and on broadcast TV here in Guyana. Please donate. We want to expand some new programming in the new year. For those of you who have continued on a monthly basis to support us, we say thanks to you. There are some people I should thank who have made some contributions over the weekend. I'll get to those names tomorrow evening. I remember Neville, who has contributed to our program. Thank you very much, Neville. The rest of you I shall acknowledge tomorrow, but please go to your PayPal or your Zelle or your Cash App and make a donation to Politics 101. We have to support our own programming. We have to support our own initiatives, because it's one of the ways that we continue to put the pressure on those who hold the power. We have been doing that for the last 3 years, and we have arrived at a point where we can look ourselves in the faces and say, we have made a difference. Shara Duncan's program has made a difference. Mark Benchup's program has made a difference. Kedaki's program has made a difference. Politics 101, of course, has made a difference. We come here every evening to do what we consider public service, to hold the line and to bring information and analysis to you that you wouldn't get from the traditional media. And so we don't get advertisements and all of those fancy things that the old traditional media get. And so therefore we rely on you to help us stay the course. So please donate and donate handsomely to Politics 101. Our end of the year drive, Christmas drive, whatever you want to call it, to take care of some of those residual and other expenses that we incur as we come to you every night and in some cases during the day. Thank you very much for tuning in tonight. We'll be here tomorrow night with Vincent Alexander, who's going to give us the inside take on what's happening with this local government election there in GCOM. So that's tomorrow night. Until then, want to thank you all so much for coming down tonight. And tomorrow night, same time, same place.